Hey, today we're going to do a low back sequence to help release some of the pressure and the compression that we gain from sitting all day and unevenly distributing the load, and essentially making areas of our back work harder than they need to. So for today's class, you'll need either a black strap and a felt pad, or just a towel. If you're using a towel, roll it up so it creates quite a long, thin roll. Not too long, not too thick, maybe about half the height of your pinky finger. That's it. If you're using a black strap, well, then just lay the black strap on the floor. Remove your cape if you have your cape. Hang it up, and let's do our superhuman work. I'm just going to toss the towel out of the way for now and use my black strap so hopefully you can see a little bit more clearly. I'd like you to just lay down on the strap. Make sure that you're sitting on the strap, and that the back of your head is also on the strap. Arrange your body in a way that feels comfortable and easy. By that, I mean you're not tipping all over the place, and maybe your feet have to be wider, your arms have to be wider. We're looking for zero effort in this position. Essentially, we want to dive into the body and recognize different areas of tension and load, and maybe from that knowledge, be able to release the body further when we start to move. Once you find a comfortable position, go ahead and take a few normal breaths, but shift all of your awareness to the breath. Notice which areas of your body expand and which areas don't. It's really the areas that don't expand that we're looking towards for a little bit more insight or feedback. By directing our breath into those areas that are not used to expanding, not only do we deepen our awareness of it, but we can also create more harmonized and optimal movement by sending our breath there. This will also give us insight to different areas that are being gripped or held within this position. If there's more weight in one side versus the other side. And the longer you lay here, could you direct your breath a little bit more efficiently to create a three-dimensional breath in the belly, in the back, but also in the side body, in the upper back, and of course the chest. So we're not leaving anything out. Just like every single yoga practice or movement practice, it's ultimately yours. So if we do something today that feels absolutely delicious, feel free to stay there as long as you want. You may start to experience a little bit of sensation or pressure, but neither of those are bad. Pain, on the other hand, is a completely different story. Because you're alone in your house doing this, keep in mind that being more gentle with yourself is going to be more effective at this point. So again, you can stay as you are, or I'd like you to imagine, it's not going to be a very big movement, your tailbone slowly beginning to curl under, and try to keep that movement in the pelvis. And one vertebra at a time, try to push your spine into the strap. Your bum will maybe leave a little bit from the floor, and you might not come very high up your spine, or maybe you come around the tips of the shoulder blades. And slowly undo that movement, trying to segment the spine one vertebra at a time. The more efficiently we can articulate the spine in this way, the more efficient the load distribution becomes. Let's try that now through the upper body. I'm going to round the tips of the shoulder blades. If this is uncomfortable for you, or you have neck tension, chronic neck tension, or previous injuries, just do this with your imagination. If you don't, bring the tip of the tongue to the roof of the mouth, and slowly curl the chin in, flexing through the cervical spine, and coming up eventually, again around the tips of the shoulder blades. As you roll out, can you find even more contact individually through each and every vertebra? If this idea of segmenting the spine is foreign to you, feel free to stay here and do this several more times. If you'd like to continue, slowly roll off of your strap. Take as much time as you need. Come up into a seat. Get rid of your black strap or your towel and take a hold of your felt pad. So if you're using your towel, we'll now roll it in a different way. Depending on the size, you might want to fold it in half, like I'm going to do. Just ensure that this is wide enough to spill out over the sides of your hips. So it's going to be wider than your body. And go ahead and roll this up. Try to make it as smooth as possible. And the roll itself, you don't want any larger than the size of just your palm. Not your whole hand, just around the palm. Again, I'm going to use my felt pad. Really the only difference between the felt pad and the towel is that this is a little bit more dense. And some of you at home that are not used to doing this or never used this before in this way, you're definitely not going to have access to a felt pad. So it's important to make do with what we have. Sit in front of your felt pad and smoosh it down with your hand so it doesn't unroll. Go ahead and lay onto your back. The felt pad will end up below your belly button line, but above your sacrum. If you have an injury in your low back, it's very important to place the roll either above or below your injury. If you don't have any issues with your low back, imagine your belly button was on your back instead of your front. Sit your roll directly below the belly button, a little bit closer to your bum. Place your hands on your belly. Broaden through the collarbones, and you may even want to push your elbows down and scoop the shoulder blades underneath the heart to feel a little space within the chest and across the collarbones. I personally like to place my hands on my belly, giving me the opportunity to monitor my breath. Speaking of breath, with every exhale, notice how your rib cage moves in towards the spine and down towards the navel. This movement is really, really important for spinal safety. More often than not, when we lift our arms over our head or in some sort of extension, the rib cage flares out, which causes compression in the lower back or more load than it needs. By drawing the ribs in and down and getting used to this movement within the body, we can then maintain a longer spine from a place of support, almost as if we're creating a cylinder around the spine itself. But this is only one part. The other part is what's happening in your pelvis. We often lived either in a posterior tuck with the tailbone tucked under, or an anterior tilt when the bum is really sticking out. What we're trying to do here is find the middle ground. So instead of sticking your butt out as much as you can and tucking your tailbone as much as you can, I'd like you to imagine that you're reaching your tailbone towards your mid-shins. As that happens, notice if the chin wants to tuck in a little bit more or the back of the neck begins to lengthen. Sometimes the pressure will show up right away, or a dull, achy sensation will begin to build. Continue to direct your breath into the low back and the low belly, creating not only a deeper self-awareness, but also helping to release the pressure along the spine. In a parasympathetic state, or a very calm, rested state, we have the ability to create change, not for the now, but lasting change. The muscles that are under pressure right now have the chance to release. Think about a deep tissue massage. By getting in there and creating more blood flow, those muscles that have been stuck begin to release a little bit. They uncast themselves. And later on at the end of our practice, we'll engage them just a little bit to help them recast themselves properly to support the spine more efficiently. You may start to feel different sensations within your body. There's no two physical bodies that are the same. Again, be gentle with yourself, but I encourage you to remain curious about what's happening. Continue to lengthen your tailbone forward towards your mid-shins. And imagine your hip flexors are getting heavier. Not to pull the bum straight down to the ground next to the roll, but instead to traction the spine. In a way, it's like your butt cheeks were trying to move towards your heels, forward and down. The movement itself might be micro. And if you're truly aware of your breath and what's happening, this micro movement might make a huge shift. Walk your feet a little bit wider apart. Allow your feet to get heavy into the earth. Then tip your knees extremely slow towards one another. The knees themselves don't have to touch. And sometimes I can spend 5 to 10 minutes doing this one round. So really, there's no rush. If you think about driving on a highway and you're doing a speed limit, or 10 or 15 over, you may notice elk on the side of the road, or maybe the mountains, depending where you are, if there's mountains there. And if you're walking that same stretch of highway, not only could you see the elk and the mountains, but you might be able to hear them, or to feel the coolness of the breeze coming over the top of the mountains, or maybe even smell the elk. That's what we're trying to do here, is really embrace what is happening. In a way, absorb as much information as we can to then create longer change. If you come across a wall, try not to push beyond the wall. Instead, embrace it, breathe into it. Heel-toe your feet together. Take as much time as you need to do that. Continue to breathe into the pot of the belly and the low back. I'm trying to maintain breath through the nostrils. Imagine that your feet are cemented into the earth. And begin to tip your knees just about an inch, inch and a half over to the left. If you feel the urge to lift a part of the foot, I encourage you just to pause. Anchor down through the right foot again. And maybe even imagine that your right hip is filled with sand. So we're not aiming to move into a twist. In fact, the low back has 1 to 2 degrees of rotation within the spinal column. So we're not looking to force rotation. Instead, we tip the knees over to the left, changing the load into the tissue. Again, it's coming back to that idea of a massage. Slowly bring your knees back to center. And explore the right. Again, about an inch, inch and a half. Remember, the body is not balanced from left and right. Our bones may be different shapes and sizes. So it's important to not expect the exact same thing. All I ask is that you remain curious, and in this case, with your feet glued to the ground. You do have the option to imagine your left hip now getting heavy or being filled with sand. Slowly make your way back to center. Draw the right knee into the chest and try not to use your hands. Notice how many other muscles and tissues have to participate to bring the knee into flexion and the hip into flexion. Keeping the hip, the butt cheek we'll say, pretty much where it is, begin to lift the heel away from the hip. So you might want to quickly straighten the leg. I encourage you to avoid doing that. We are trying to create space in the back line of the body, but do this in a way that our hip can actually do the work, rather than using a strap on the hands. Make 5 ankle circles now, as we still continue to lift the heel away from the hip. Try to explore full range. It's okay if you experience different cracks, as long as there's no pain involved with it. Reverse the circle. And bend into the right knee. Plant the foot softly down to the ground. And take a moment here and feel if there's anything different in the low back. Bring the left knee into the chest, so the left hip goes into flexion. The left butt cheek is still heavy. Then try to lift the left heel away from the hip. You might end up with a very bent knee or the leg really straight. It doesn't matter. What we're trying to do is teach the low back to remain neutral while we extend the knee, while using your left hip flexors. Begin to move through these ankle circles, 5 or so in each direction. And as you move, notice if you create tension in your jaw or suddenly you have a unibrow. Reverse your circles. At any point you were to do this with or without the roll, but maybe for 30 seconds to a minute to 2 minutes with each ankle, your legs will be completely different after. I can assure you of that. Bend your left knee, plant your foot down onto the ground. As I mentioned, it's important to recast or re-engage the muscles that we just released. I'd like you to lift up all 10 toes, but maintain contact with your toe mounds. Imagine pulling the heels towards your bum to then engage your hamstrings. Lengthen the tailbone towards your shin. And as you inhale, expand the low belly. Feel a sense of lightness in your low back. On your next inhale, let's lift up by moving the hips towards the sky. Now into extension. The tailbone is lengthening towards the shins. Hamstrings and glutes are engaged as the heels pull in and our hips are in extension. Move your towel or roll out of the way. Hold here for a couple of breaths and try to invite all of the leg to participate, as if your inner thighs were hugging towards one another. Not just from the knees, but actually from your inner thighs close to your groin. Same thing with the outer thighs. Imagine they're pushing out while we still hug in through the inner line of the legs. From here, or toes down and heels lifted, I'd like you to roll out slowly, one vertebra at a time. Try to allow the upper body to remain nice and calm. The breath to be full and hopefully a little bit more natural. Once you come down, ensure that you roll from the sacrum to the tip of the tailbone. Take a moment here on your back without any props. Notice how you feel. Calm, relaxed, supported. Moving really slowly, I'd like you to straighten one leg, then the other leg. If you find that this is pressure on the small of your low back, you can bend your knees again. Fold your felt pad or towel in half and place it underneath your shins and your heels. Even though our practice wasn't big today, we've done a lot of big internal exploration. Give yourself at least a minute or two here to sit and observe, or to lay down and observe, to find rest, stillness, ease. When you're ready to get up, I encourage you to go for a walk, to feel the length and the space in your lower back, and maybe to notice if there's more freedom in the upper back and the shoulders because of what we did down here today. Thanks so much for joining. I'll hopefully see you again soon.